All right, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. I am your host, DBQ Hams. A little slow on the uptake tonight. If you are watching the video live, you will see Hamp give me the sign, and I am lost in my own train of thought, trying to figure something out here. And this is what happens as you dive into some games and realize, how do those systems work? And you start digging around. But we'll talk about that today as we're talking about a variety of games. But we also have plenty of news. And I guess sadly, we have a lot of game shutters this week as well. Like this was an earnings call. This was a report time. We get a number of studio announcements in terms of profits up, down, slashes, meeting expectations, falling short of expectations. And in the process of that, because of the investors' realities of many of these companies, of the bigger ones, we see some of closures of games and services. So we'll be talking about that as well. Tonight, joining me out somewhere in the ether is Towmaster99, who will be popping in, fading in as he is able. But with me tonight, running the show, is Hamp. How are you, Hamp?
I'm good, and viewers should be aware. I don't think listeners will be able to tell the difference, but viewers should be aware that you may hear Tao start talking before I'm able to bring him on screen, because I'm dealing with a new monitor and setup here, so I'm not exactly sure. So I don't have Discord blown out full screen like I normally do. So we'll just have to see how it goes. I'm sure it'll work itself out.
This is why he's coming in from the ether. He is descending upon us with his voice first and then with his physical presence. So let's go ahead and get started. You have been playing some more Need for Speed Unbound. I mean, one, you're a racing game fan, so this isn't surprising, but it seems like, is it because of the game is pulling you in, or are we in kind of a racing game drought at this point that you are not invested in Gran Turismo, in Forza Horizon? We're kind of in this in-between phase of where things are at.
This was definitely out of obligation, so I felt like I needed to put in the minimum hours of time that I feel is necessary to achieve minimum ROI with any game. I've enjoyed, up until today, I've really enjoyed what I've played. To an extent, walking back maybe some of the comments from last week where I do feel like I feel a little bit of a personality around Lakeshore, and the police department. Not necessarily a super distinctive personality, but I've been engaged in a couple high-speed pursuits or high-speed chases, really, where one was fairly involved with more cops coming out than had been the norm. But then another one that was like, I mean, it was a full-on GTA 5, five-star type of pursuit.
5-star, like just, yep, everybody coming at you.
Helos, spike strips, roadblocks, yada, yada, yada. Those things are a heck of a lot easier to avoid in Lakeshore and in Need for Speed Underground or Unbound than, say, Hot Pursuit, where those things pop up directly in your route, between where you are and where you need to be. So I don't know that they have that much of an effect. But they're more than the kind of entry level kind of chases that I was involved in at first. The problem and why I'm not going to say that I fell off the game, but definitely I'm ready to put it aside for a little bit, is because it's super grindy. And they're,
in terms of winning races, getting enough money to get the next upgrade to be able to compete in the next races and feel competitive in it. Yeah.
There are no big payoffs. And I mean, even when it looks like it's a big payoff, like an 18 grand payoff, that usually comes with something like a 6K buy-in. And so unless you place first in the race, which at challenging, you're just not going to place first every single race. If you place first, you get 12 grand. But you're most likely to get something less than that. And then, and those things are outside the norm. The norm is that there's usually like 1,500 here, 2,250 there, and it's pretty much you earn those rewards. You go back to a hideout. You buy, if you're lucky, one upgrade. If you're trying to also do cosmetics, that's further impinging. So it's just a very stingy kind of approach, as seems to be the norm with so many things today, so many progression paths today.
Well, it definitely is. I mean, it's designed to keep you in that world for a long period of time, and it is. I mean, when I played, I think between my son and I, we are getting close to our 10 hours of EA play, and there were a lot of times that I would restart a race if I wasn't finishing in the top 3. Like, I'd come in 5, and some of those races are. It takes one, it's hard to recover, right? You get one bad corner or something hits you, and because there's not a rewind, which is actually kind of refreshing, I found, but also makes the grindiness all the more so, because you are not only playing a lot of races to progress, but you are also frequently replaying races. It has a very old school aspect to that, right? Like, this is not a forgiving game in that way.
Yeah, and I can accept the non-forgiving in terms of the competitiveness of you going head to head with the competitors. But as is the norm with Need for Speed in this era, and to a certain extent, it evokes some very Souls-like feelings, right? You'll be trucking along. Sometimes you'll be in first. Sometimes you'll be in second. Sometimes you'll be in second or third, and you can tell that you're going to overtake and pop into first position. And out of nowhere, right, you will get some piece of random civilian traffic just completely end your race. And like you said, then by the time the computer resets you and you start taking off again, you get overtaken by everyone. And so yeah, and then you're running the race again. After each race, then, and I haven't figured out what trips it. I thought for a while that it was if you came in first, second, or third, then there were cops, that the cops would give chase. But I've won a race, and a police pursuit didn't ensue immediately afterwards. So it's some type of random tripwire,
Doesn't it seem to, like, you can tell that you've triggered the police during the race, but they don't usually take you out in the race? Like, it seemed like I would see that, and I guess I didn't pay enough attention to know if they would start sometimes, after the race, if I hadn't tripped them during the race.
Well, they seem to get triggered almost every race, with very few exceptions. But I haven't been able to correlate. So given that 90% of the races they activate, right, and engage in pursuit in the race, I haven't been able to correlate that to when do they specifically come after me after the race is done. But that happens pretty frequently, and again, it's another impact on your time, right? You finish a race, you want to go on to the next event, or you want to go back to the hideout, and you're not able to because you get pursued by cops. And some of those pursuits are rewarding, but as I mentioned in the one today, and this used to happen in Hot Pursuit as well, or maybe it was Most Wanted. I think that was the thing that I disliked about Most Wanted the most was, sometimes those things are rewarding, but sometimes, man, they just go on forever. And specifically in Most Wanted, I used to remember just like, wanting to put the game down, needing to go eat, needing to go into my next event, and like it would be a 10-minute like ordeal. I cut a clip today to post on my website, and it was a 6-minute clip, and of that, the race was like 2 minutes. Like I had
And
to.
you spent the rest of the time just trying to avoid the cop. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, as I mentioned, in the outset, it's more Need for Speed, but it's well worn, right, in the wool that it's wearing right now. And as I mentioned originally, there are some things that I walk back, but overall, I still feel like we're still waiting on them to figure out where to take the thing next, or to, the Need for Speed Unbound, Need for Speed Heat. Some of the problems they have is they try and take a smidgen of everything that Need for Speed has been, rather than picking this is Hot Pursuit. picking this is Rivals, going down a specific path. And the last thing that I'll mention is the other concern I have about the grindiness is Need for Speed Carbon was a game that was really oriented around you driving a car and dumping all of your money into that car and tricking it out to the max. I had to actually roll that campaign back a little bit. I think I had multiple game saves. But there was a point where I bought a new car very late in the game, and I actually did not have enough time to upgrade it all the way before I got to the end of the campaign and the few final races you need to win. So I wound up having to go back to a previous save and grab my original car and just spend more money on it. And I don't know that this is not that same thing. I have ping-ponged back and forth between that first showcase back to the Friday night before, I don't know how many times, right? Trying to earn, and being indecisive of do I need to keep upgrading the car? Because I'm not certain if I move forward to the Saturday night event that, that my car is tricked out enough. So
yeah, some of that is hard to know in terms of pre-race stuff if you're going to be in that kind of zone, or at least in the competitiveness. Nice pull on the 2006 game with Need for Speed Carbon. So,
and I did have one other thing. One other thing I'll add is this game also trips one of my nopes, which is do not force and require me to drive drift events. That is a sacred pillar, and this game trades on that a little bit. I hate to keep going, but I should mention the one other thing that makes it super grindy. But also, so they force you to do it the one time. They kind of pseudo force you to do it a couple more times, because what the game does in that initial kind of campaign outset after the prologue is they will, when you come out of the hideout, they will generally have 3, at most 5 events in your area that you can go to, but many of those will be locked. And when you only have one car, you put money in it. You have to upgrade it to level A to get to a point where you can compete in the A class car events. You only have one car. So to then compete in the B class car events, you have to go back to the garage, strip parts off, make it a B class car, and go back out again. Right? Because again, it's you don't really make
going back
money.
To the grindy bits
right.
of Right.
So so there we are. It's fun when it's on the road. In many ways, the same problem that I have with Gran Turismo. It's great when it's on the road, but the campaign is problematic. The structure.
Yeah, I would agree. The driving of it is very enjoyable. It's the combination, the amalgam of different styles that start to drag it down without feeling too confident in any one direction. Yes, and sometimes the game just gets up in our craw, gets under our skin. We need to kind of have a chance to vent about that. I might have one of those a little bit later in the show as well. I want to hit on a quick game that I've been playing that released last week, and then let's head into our news section, and we'll get some news out of the way before we head into the rest of our games. So back in December 21, I had played a demo on Steam's Next Fest of Power Chord. This is a rogue deck builder, Slay the Spire-like game, very Slay the Spire-like, in a Borderlands cell shaded. See, I couldn't get this last week, still can't get it. Cell shaded style, but with a heavy metal rock band theme to it. That you are a rock band attacking, fighting back against demons, and you've got a bassist and you've got a guitarist, and you get, basically your bandmates end up playing the roles of kind of traditional classes. That you have a tank, you have a healer, you have your magician, magic user, and you have your heavy attack, or your attack guy, your assassin. More or less kind of falls into those types of your DPS, those types of roles. But it feels a little more balanced than the demo from a year ago, which is good, right? It should. It came out last week. And they already have some. you start with 4 characters, and there are more characters coming, and so there's some free DLC coming, which still falls within those classes, but each of the different characters in those classes, when there are multiple characters in a class, they'll have some different skill sets. So it allows you to kind of play around with your characters in addition to building a deck and making it through a very Slay the Spire type of map in terms of going battle to battle. Maybe you stop at to rest up or to heal. You stop and get some extra cards or to upgrade, and you make it through kind of the node to node battle. It's fun. It is enjoyable. A run can take a while. Nice thing is that you can save in the middle of it and drop out and come back to it, so that it makes it a little more accessible. It feels like I'm really enjoying it. I loved it before, right? You got to know it's the combination of, I enjoy Borderlands, I enjoy the art style, I like the kind of the music, the rock music in it is solid. Heavy metal music is solid, and not like Metal Hellsinger solid in terms of really going down that path. This is kind of hard rock 80s Metallica type of envision that aspect of things. And the deck building is very enjoyable. I don't know that it's doing a whole lot new. I think that's probably the downside here, is that it feels very much like a reskinned, modded aspect of things that you've done before. If you've played a lot of Slay the Spire, Monster Train, things like that, doesn't make it bad, right? It makes it very solid in terms of its mechanics and its balance, but it doesn't feel like it's bringing a whole lot new to it, at least at this point. I think the place where it can bring some new stuff is as they start trickling out these the free characters, the additional characters, that they'll bring different buffs, debuffs, skills to it, so that you'll end up playing. I think one of the ways that deck builders end up changing the way you play based on the deck you build, where in this case, you can change the way you play based on the characters that you bring into your battles, like your party. And so if you change your party composition, you're going to build your deck differently to highlight that party. And so that adds another wrinkle to it. So I'm really curious to see what it does. It also feels like it would be great on a tablet, on iOS, or on Switch, because you're basically just dragging cards to attack. So having a touchscreen implementation, even on a Steam Deck aspect, would make it very, it's the kind of game that you could pick up and play. All right. Yeah.
Now this game, I mean, given where it positioned itself in releasing on Steam, I guess there was never any potential for this game like grabbing any market share away from Hi-Fi Rush, right? I mean, just two completely different kind of marketing positions.
Very different styles. Yes, I think that this is a much smaller team. This is an indie team versus Hi-Fi Rush, which is an amazing game, right? But this is Hi-Fi Rush is that it's a rhythm action game. This is very much a, rhythm is the context, but the music is the context, but there's no rhythm aspects here. It is simply just a way to give you a soundtrack and move some cards around, give you different types of things there. So no, Hi-Fi Rush, again, still just a solid game. I mean, it is impressive in terms of the more I play it, the more I notice little aspects in the animations that go along with all the beats. And so there's a lot there for the scope of the game that it is. It does a lot with what it has. So, all right, let's dive into some news stories. As we talked about at the top of the show, we've got a number of quarterly and a number of company updates here, and which relates to game closures or shutdowns for a number of live service games. But let's start off with Konami. Konami has slashed its profits, or slashed its product outlook for 2023, but actually its sales profits are up. So this is an interesting piece here where they are reducing the scope of what they're doing, but their net sales are up 5.5% year over year, but their profit is down 31% year over year. And so that adds to some of the story here. And Game Logic, you pulled the story from Destructoid in terms of Konami slashing its product outlook.
Yep. So true. This story is from Destructoid, authored by Zoe Hanley. In a release from Konami, the Japanese publisher has drastically cut back its financial outlook for 2023, almost in half. While they initially looked to make an operating profit of 76.5 billion yen, they've slashed that forecast to 42.5 billion. That's a rather sizable difference, but the publisher isn't really saying what the cause of it is. Now, normally when a company indicates that it's going to be operating at the same volume or increased volume, but suffers a loss in operating profit, that's usually an indication of, sometimes you'll see that happen with an acquisition where they'll take that hit in the year that they're making that sale. Often what it may mean, because they're not saying, is that there is some significant investment going on that they're not disclosing. Sometimes it is simply large-scale development when you're talking about a gaming company for something that they won't sell that year. And so they're taking the knock-on expenses because that's coming out of capital usually, but they're unable to start reporting on revenue against it because it hasn't left R&D or development pipeline or whatever. So, is this a big game that's coming out from Konami? Is this something where it's all hands on deck? Is it something where they've expended, but they're trying to figure out how to back out of a given space? Sometimes you'll see this when a company has a part of a business and they are working on divesting themselves from that business. And so in the conversion of resources, there's still expenses going on, but they're not able to, again, report that, there's no revenue generating effort coming out of that. So it'll be interesting. Maybe they've got a bunch of studios working on the rumored
We
Silent
do know
Hill.
that that there's some Silent Hill projects in development. They announced or teased some of that last fall, I think is when they were teasing that around October. So we know that there is some there. And I would think at this point, that's probably a pretty significant investment, but like most current generation games, is going to take longer to build than probably investors would want in order to hit that kind of, that graphical fidelity and depth of gameplay. So, all right, why don't you take the next one here with Armored Core 6?
So this story over on PC Games N by Will Nelson. Armored Core 6 developer says Dark Souls and Elden Ring changed us, in quotes. It may have been 10 years, but the classic From Software mecha and robot game series is back with Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. And a producer of the studio has talked about how the experience of making Souls-like games from Dark Souls to Sekiro and Elden Ring has changed the team and its level of experience, making this Armored Core game the best it can be. Now, the article goes on to say that the team is not saying that Armored Core 6 is going to be a Souls-like, because that has been the king fear since this game was announced, that because Elden Ring was so successful, because Dark Souls has been so successful, that they were going to take that same approach with Armored Core 6. And for a person who is a super big mech fan, that's would be the death knell of a genre that I'm super interested in.
You don't want to time your attacks and watch your frame animations with your mechs?
I don't need hitboxes, all that kind of stuff. I think it's still cause for concern for someone like me who is big on mechs but isn't big on Souls-like games, because quite frankly, any intermixing of that Souls-like experience into this genre has the potential to change the mixture in a way that turns me off. And so, it remains to be seen. As far as I know, we don't have a release date or even window of Armored Core 6. So
not that I'm aware of either, yeah.
Of course, Elden Ring just came out, and this should be, I think it's the same. I mean, I don't know that I don't deeply study From Software, but I don't get the sense that there's multiple teams within that studio. I mean, the people who are on the Armored Core 6 team have been, did work on Elden Ring. I think the only thing that I'm conscious of them swapping out is directors. And so there may be some ancillary staffing manpower, but it doesn't sound like there's a full on separate Armored Core 6 team. They were a team that maybe got started on this that have been waiting on reinforcements to arrive from Elden Ring. So, the point is that you're still going to have a lot of people who were cross-pollinated with working on games in that motif, and they're going to bring a lot of that with them to Armored Core 6. And so I'm definitely going to be laying back, seeing how this comes out, because any whiff of the Souls formula in this, I'm like, I'll go get my mech fun elsewhere, or I'll just wait.
All right, Tao, you have joined us, and you've joined us just in time to talk about some of the games that are shutting down. But I understand that you were late because you were trying to finish off your Marvel Snap season before it resets next week. So appreciate your commitment to. I say that as a joke because Tao and I had a chance to play a little bit of Marvel Snap against each other this week when they had their release of the PvP mode. And so, but we are here to talk about some harsh realities of games as service and the thin profit margins that live games have. So, Tao, why don't you give us a rundown? You've got 4 games here, so I'll let you take the floor.
Thank you. And just so you know, I finished the season already, so you don't have to worry about that. Talk about that later, maybe. Actually, I forgot to put that in our rundown, but it's kind of a hectic day. Anyways, yeah. So a bunch of games getting shut down this past week, or announcements, I guess, that they're technically not shut down yet. First on the list is Rumbleverse, which was kind of like a wrestling battle royal type of game, kind of more melees, and kind of like was grab moves and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's by Iron Galaxy, who had done a lot of fighting game pieces and ports and games over the years.
Yeah, I think you can like maybe get like kind of like some melee weapons too, and like just like stuff in the city, like fighting in the cities. From what I've seen, I had never actually played it, but they had announced that's going to be shut down
The
at
end of February. Yep.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that will be no more. I don't remember if this one. No, there's nothing. I think I'm thinking of Knockout City. So next up, and I'll just kind of run through these really quick, and then we can talk about it a little bit more if everybody wants to. One of those kind of a surprise. EA shutting down Apex Legends Mobile. I thought that was doing good. I guess not. And this
that was kind of the surprise one of these. That it just won Apple's mobile game of the year at the end of December in terms of, but I think the doing good in terms of a solid gameplay experience and doing good in terms of significant monetization are probably 2 different things.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought there was a community, but I guess not. At least not what EA wanted. And it looks like they partnered with Tencent's Lightspeed and Quantum Studios, I think was doing the mobile side of it. Or helping doing the mobile side of it. And that one, let's see if they had a date here, an exact date. Let's see the exact date for them, actually. But in that same the same article here from The Verge.
Yeah, it's going off at the beginning of May. May 1st is when it will go offline. Yep.
Okay, cool. And then they also had said they are halting development on a planned Battlefield mobile game. So, or EA is, excuse me.
I don't mean to be snarky, but again, right? Like there have been a couple mobile attempts at Battlefield, and it has not kind of come to fruition.
When you say attempts, just they were doing it and it never happened, or they actually released.
Oh, right. They had the free to play cartoony Battlefield back in 2010.
Was that a mobile game? I thought that was just
no. It was free to play, right? Like they've
just free to play.
Figure this out. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
but yes, they were trying to. This was kind of in the same vein of Call of Duty Mobile, that they were trying for a full-on Battlefield experience aspect on mobile.
Yeah, just on mobile. Okay. Yeah, sure.
And then we get Crossfire, which is came over as we had a single player that came over with it by Remedy, I believe, but the Crossfire game itself has been free to play and came to Xbox last year through Game Pass. And it's one of those where it's not able to be purchased outside of Game Pass. And so it makes for an interesting, as a live game shuts down, do you have the ability to play it, is one of the conversations that have been happening that I've read around Crossfire. Do you have other information there on the Crossfire one?
Just that it's shut down as of May 18th of this year, 2023. And just the Xbox side of it. Obviously, I'm assuming the PC side still
Yeah,
going,
I think the PC side is still going up and going. Yep.
that's
Because that's
pretty
it
popular.
it was international and it came.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Like you said, it was the single player was Remedy, and then just the multiplayer was, which I think the single player you had to pay for, I believe, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Yeah. So it's kind of an odd pairing there. I think I tried playing this game like one time, but I was having issues just like trying to connect, or I have had some kind of weird issue. And it was like, I think a few weeks after the initial release on Xbox. So I don't know. I'm assuming they probably fixed that, or it might have just been something on my side, but I
But
didn't
the
have.
next game you've played multiple times and on multiple platforms. We even have played it here as co-hosts of the show.
Yes, and funny that I think it was last episode or a couple episodes ago where Hamp had asked me a question pertaining to this exact game about like what drives me to play this game, or what would keep me keep going on this game. And well, now not so much anymore, because as of the end of the month, the 28th, Knockout City will also be shutting down its servers and games. So this is the one I was thinking of, where they're gonna, at least on the PC side, they're gonna let you do like private servers. So you can do somebody can just set up a server on the PC and then you can connect to that. I'm assuming probably just on PC. It won't be like cross-platform or anything, obviously, because console side will be shut down. So this one was, out of all of them, this would hurt me the most, because like we said, I was just playing this. I started playing this again, kind of getting back into it too. The one thing on this one though, I think it's a little weird. I think they said, I don't know, I think I see it in this article. I think it was a different one I was reading. I think after like the 16th or 14th or something like that, they'll stop the store, so you can't purchase anything anymore, because you can use real world money to buy like just skins and stuff like that, and cosmetic stuff. I just wonder why they don't do that now, because I mean, you can't really do anything anymore after that certain time period, and then obviously at the end of February, everything's shut down. And then they said, I think it's like, so they shut down the game that point, and then I think there's still like 1 week left over where they do just like a special like farewell or whatever, farewell week, where they kind of just open up everything. And once again, it's like, well, it's gonna get shut down. Like I think they open up the season pass too, and it's like it's not really no point, because I'm not gonna be able to play it anymore. So I don't know. It looked like they had at least one kind of good IP crossover. They had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That was recent. That was like this
Yeah.
fall, wasn't it? Yeah.
Actually still going on when I was playing. Well, at least when I was playing, I had played this past week, but a couple weeks ago when I was playing, they had the turtle skins and Bebop and Rocksteady. I think the Foot Soldier maybe too was in there. So.
Yeah, that art style very much feels like the 80s, 90s cartoon art style of TMNT. Yep.
Yeah, so it was kind of weird. Like, I thought I saw some other kind of, at least one other maybe kind of semi, popular IP that they crossed over with, but I can't remember now. It was, I wasn't playing at the time, but I just saw it and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I wasn't playing it back then. I think that was like sometime mid last year. So, but yeah, unfortunately, Knockout City will be gone as of the end of the month. But like I said, you can, if you want to play on PC, people will be playing it. So, fortunately, those are at least 4 that I know of, that we know of, that I think we put out there in our news feed. Any other comments on the shutdowns? I mean, I know you mentioned DB about obviously these games are pretty much gone. I mean, other than maybe Knockout City. Sure, maybe other people might kind of like screw around coding, maybe get them going again, but more likely they're pretty much dead. So,
Hamp, you got some thoughts here? It looks like you're getting ready to ruminate.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a matter of, look, we're we're in hard times, right? Business cycle wise, economically, not catastrophic, but certainly times where companies are having to make choices to tighten their belts. And I think, with regards to Apex Legends Mobile, when, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, this game's doing well. I think part of it is the optic of, for however many people, if you're EA, you look at it and you say, however many people I have on this game doing the constant churn, and we talk about games as a service as much more an operating capital, right? It's constant cash in, cash back out. It's not, I invest a bunch of money, I release a game, I have, months and months to see returns, right? It's day to day. And I think part of the thing to look at is, for every person that I have on that, turning that hamster wheel, I'm paying Apple and Google 30% of whatever I get back. Whereas, hey, if I take that, however many people it is, if it's a small army of people, and I put them on Apex Legends, the desktop version, I have at least some chance of recouping some of that on my own, because a lot of people play that on PC, which means a lot of people can get it. Can you get it directly from EA?
Yeah, I think right. If you're playing EA Play, yeah. You wouldn't have to necessarily.
You wouldn't have to go through Steam. You wouldn't have to go through, whatever. So, I mean, again, those are just, choices you make. And then you look at it like, look, if I convert that person over to an Apex Legends desktop person, am I keeping that person, or am I, if I leave them on mobile, am I potentially laying that person off? So I think those are choices that have to be made. I think overall for the games as a service, and we talked about this a little earlier today on the Basement Radio Arcade podcast and a one-off rant that we did. I think there's a lot of, oh my goodness, the sky is falling, games as a service, or see, that's what you get, games as a service are evil and therefore everyone's doomed to fail. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's the case that it's been what I've been saying the whole time about battle royales, which are a subset of games as a service. There's only so many of these that the market is going to support. Because if you're a brand new gamer, you come into the market, you say you want continuing live games because you want a persistent experience, you're going to make a short list of what are the ones that are the most popular, because you're going to go where the gamers are in droves. So, when you're Knockout City and you have a player base, but you don't have one of the largest player bases, you hit your apogee fairly quickly, and everything is downhill from there. You don't amass more and more and more, people, and become this big gravimetric force in the universe. While Call of Duty, Apex, Fortnite, Destiny 2, right, is sucking all the air out of the room. So, I think people are unfortunately going to have to learn the same lesson that they learned about battle royales, which is that, hey, everybody can't keep doing this because there just isn't enough fish food in the tank for everyone.
Yeah, I think that is a very true case. And we've got a couple of, you and I both have some game to talk about this rest of the show here that leans into games as a service and some of the struggles and challenges there. But I think that is a very key piece. And with the profit margins as small, or the expectations of returns as high as they are, that this is, keeping a game as a service going that's not bringing in increasing revenue, that is maybe holding its own or slowly dying. You're right. It is probably better to cut that off and move those resources and not invest that capital into something that is on the downward end of that life span. So yeah, it'll be, I think the only other piece I want to say is, I think this is just the start, right? I think we're going to see more of this in the next couple months before we hit the end of fiscal years.
So a quick question for you guys. And I haven't really seen too much fervor on it, I guess. Not that I really have a lot of social media anymore. I've kind of cut ties on most stuff, but I'm sure it's probably out there. But what do you think of, so certain games here, I believe like Rumbleverse and even Crossfire X, I think has like a 2-week limit from, I think, February 3rd about refunds of these types of games. Do you think it's, and I didn't see anything for Apex or I think Knockout City.
There's not one for Apex, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I think Knockout City might have said they might do some refunds, but I can't find out this article. There's a couple different articles I was looking at, but Do you think it's like, to me, I mean, like you should know what you're getting into with these games, especially with these smaller games. Like, hey, there's a chance you won't be able to play with this game. Well, I would have thought like at least a year, but some of these games, I think like DB mentioned, like it's less than a year, 6 months for Rumbleverse. And Knockout City's what, like a year, maybe year and a half.
Knockout City's
So
been 2 years. Yeah.
2 years, okay.
Yep.
Apex I know is fairly short. Crossfire out, so I think it was just last year, right? I believe. So it's been about a year, maybe a year and a half. But I mean, to me, it's like okay, like yeah, I'd probably be kind of upset if like one day, I'm sure one day Fortnite's going to go away, but I've had my fill of that game, so it's not going to be like a super big deal to me. But if someone had just jumped on, like I said, I just jumped back on Knock City. Now I had played it before, but I never did buy any. I never did any of the cosmetics for that, other than just the in-game stuff that you can get, the in-game money that you can use as you're getting XP and stuff like that. But what do you guys think about refunds or no refunds on these types of games when they go
You
down?
can go first, Hamp.
It's interesting. We're crossing into this new era, right? Where I talked a couple years ago when Xbox came out with smart delivery. And I said that's going to shine a flashlight in the corner where all the rats and mice are scurrying around, right? Because now it's a much more of a conversation if you come out and you're not just giving people reciprocation, right, for cross-generation titles, right? It's a noticeable thing because people go, well, that guy over there is doing it. Why aren't you guys doing it? And I think now that Stadia was the big one where it gave people money back in a scenario where we just didn't expect that. I think it's interesting. Obviously, if you're doing business in games, right? If you have other business models, right, and other things that you want to make go, then giving refunds back would be a nice, you would think, knock-on effect, right? Because maybe people would get that money and go play a different one of your games, right, as a service. But I don't know that the behavior that we're seeing is one-to-one for that. EA not giving money back, they're EA. What would you expect?
I know. I kind of figured that was where I was like, yeah, it makes sense that they're not. But I could see, to your point, Hamp, that I could see them giving some type of whatever the in-game currency is, not in-game, but the paid currency within Apex Legend, right? Silver, whatever, credits, whatever, giving people some type of conversion rate to incentivize them to come over to desktop. Like, yeah, you invested here, but here you can get some of those same skins over in this same version.
Yeah, what a great move that would be. And I guess they just decided that, I mean, because that takes effort, right? Somebody's going to have to write code, right, to make that happen. And I guess they decided that, that effort and the marketing and the communications and all that just wasn't enough juice for the squeeze, and that the number of players that they would convert, wouldn't be that big, and that anybody that they were going to convert was probably already playing Apex Legends desktop already, maybe. But for me personally, again, particularly since Game Pass has come along, there's this ongoing thing out in social media, and I too have cut ties with social media as of this week now, which is why you guys can see in the agenda I've gone back to using my name of Game Logic. But there's been this ongoing rhetoric about Game Pass and like, oh, I can't believe that somebody would put their money into Game Pass for 2 years and then, if they walked away from it, they would just have nothing. And I'm like, that's also true if you lease a car for 2 years. That's also true when you pay cable for 2 years. That's also true when you buy your smartphone under subsidy. Granted, you have the smartphone, but the smartphone's 2 years old by that point. So I mean, and yes, you can turn around and sell it, but my point is that in most cases when you subscribe to a service, if you end that service, you typically walk away from it without anything to show for it. And in this time, right, that's just a thing. I don't know that you're really. I don't know that that's really necessarily wrong. And that's a choice that you make, or you can continue to buy physical media. And for me, for an example, several years ago, I made a decision that I was okay not doing that because I got tired of moving CD wallets and DVD cases every time I had to move. And by the way, when you die, you can't take that stuff with you. And are you going to give it to a kid? Yeah, maybe, but are they actually going to watch it? Many of them won't. Many of them you're just going to leave saddled with the need to get rid of that stuff, right? I mean, so
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Like as somebody who often receives, people who want to give their books and movies a good home at a library. Yes, like just because it was good to you doesn't mean that it's always good to somebody else. But it is interesting just to think about that. It is such a much bigger conversation, right? Of the ownership of this, and the entire game industry had this kind of conversation in terms of as we were starting down the digital aspect. I mean, because outside of Steam, most of what we're doing on Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo, we are paying for the license of that, and that can be revoked. It is in this fine print in most of those cases. Fortunately, that has not been the way that it has been handled for the most part. If something is delisted off of a game store, if you have purchased it and it's in your library, you still have access to that. But there is always that question of, at some point, that server that you're downloading that game from is probably not going to exist. And
I would say, it hasn't been handled that way by everyone other than Nintendo. I feel like Nintendo definitely handles that way because the only way you retain access to it is to retain your old hardware. And sometimes even retaining your old hardware doesn't mean sure you have access to it.
Well, there is like a 18-step process to convert from one device to the other. Yeah, it's very simple. No, but I think it is, we are always off topic here, but I think that it is an interesting piece here of what do what's the way to handle that? And I think of it from both the cold capitalist end of, you paid for it and you knew what you were paying for. This is not yours for perpetuity. And I also think of it from you paid for it and you supported the devs for a game that you enjoyed. And you may not be able to continue to do that, but you provided that support at that time, right? I think one of the examples that I feel is doing this well is Crystal Dynamics with Avengers, where their final update that's coming in March, all the paid DLC costumes, all your MCU costumes and everything else are going to be free. That you can, there's no refunds for people that have invested hundreds of dollars in skins, but also as somebody who just threw $10 for skins at them over the Christmas holiday, I did it knowing that it was more of a, hey, yeah, I like what you're doing here. Like it's a support piece. So I think it's an interesting push-pull in terms of the industry, and if it makes consumers stop and think about if spending money on cosmetics is really worth it, because it is transitional and not permanent, then maybe that's not a bad conversation that consumers start to think about as well. All right, we have made it through the news and more. So we've got a number of other games to hit. I think we're going to kind of trim this up here, gentlemen. So Tao, you were not here in the beginning. And so since we were joking about Marvel Snap, you've got another mobile game that you're talking about. And then I want to hit on some Game Pass games, and then we'll see where we're at for time if Game Logic, you and I hit our final games here. How does that sound? Tao, how do you pronounce this game? And what is it?
So I think it's called Rymdkapsel. I'm assuming that's how I'm pronouncing it. I don't really know, but it's actually a way older game than I actually thought. It's back from 2013 when it was originally released, and I'm playing it right now on mobile, but it's on PC and just PC, I guess, right now. No console versions, as far as I could tell. Except for it looks like it was on Vita. Sorry, it wasn't PlayStation Vita. So it's a real-time strategy game. But it's it's not like Command and Conquer or say like Age of Empires, where you have a big map, open map, and you can send your soldiers or whatever out and about. You're kind of building your area, or I guess it's supposed to be a space station, that you're building space. And so you got like, a reactor you could put down to get, the material, like the minerals. You got kitchen to make food, and then or a garden to make food, and then you have a kitchen to make that food into sludge, which you use to just basically, as you're building everything, it kind of needs a little bit of, the materials. It needs food, it needs all these other different things. Reactors that makes um, um, just converts energy from the sun to make these little cubes. And it's a very minimalist graphic style. Like it looks like it's an old like Atari. Like your guys are just like little rectangles, standing upright for the most part, as they're playing. But the thing is, when you're building these different things, you're basically using basically their Tetris shapes. So it's like a long rectangle, it's an L shape. There's just a square, so things like that, and you kind of have to maneuver these things in certain ways, because if you kind of um, block, basically the main building part is a corridor. You kind of branch that out, but if you block like a part of your corridor, then you can't build on that piece anymore. You can only build in the corridors, as far as I can tell for right now. I've been playing it for quite a bit, so I don't think you can build on, like, you can't put a kitchen down and then put like your reactor on top of that, and just keep building. You have to stay within the corridors, so it's kind of strategic in that point. So you got to kind of you know lay out that part of it at the beginning, fairly well. Otherwise, you kind of gotta you know box yourself in, and you can't build, and then you have to like build all the way around, from a certain point. Um, so this the reason I even bought this, or installed this. Technically, I didn't buy it. I did a free month on Play Pass, which is Google's Play Store, like Apple. The way that Apple has their mobile thing. So I did like a free month. I downloaded this. I downloaded KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, and then Shadow Fighter 2, I think was the other one. Just kind of a simple fighting game where your characters are shadows. But I played a little bit of the Shadow Fighter, and then I played this Rymdkapsel, and I just kind of got hooked with this game because, like I said, it's really minimalist, and it's kind of you kind of just go until you get destroyed, as far as I can tell, because there are these enemies, and they're just like these red dots that are kind of fly around every little while, and they try to destroy your base or destroy your little people, really, because once your little people are gone, then the game's over, so you have to start all over again. So these other little like monoliths that you can get to, and I guess you can start building around those again. I think I only got to it once, and then I got killed like pretty much right away. So I don't know if you can just start building another base from that thing, or if it gives you extra powers, or stuff like that. So I got to play more. But I kind of, once I hit this game, I just kind of stopped with all the other games and that I wanted to try out. So I've just been trying out this one for the most part. But it's pretty fun. It's pretty nice and relaxing. It's nothing. Like I said, the graphics are super minimalist, so you're not gonna, you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So, but I'm really enjoying it so far.
Nice. Nice to have a deep cut there of something that we haven't talked about before. Last week talked about Hi-Fi Rush, but you were not here. So we actually talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the show as well. So what has been your experience? And you're playing on cloud. So as a rhythm game, I'm curious on how the latency is, given that the timing on the beats is part of the game mechanics.
Yeah, that might have been my first mistake, and I can't really speak too much because I only played it a little bit when it first came out during the was it the Xbox developer direct they had. I think I downloaded that night when I found out you could do it, and then I didn't play it again, or I didn't play it until the next day. And I only played it a little bit, a couple days, but I'm stuck at the tutorial. I'm stuck in this one part, and as you know, since you played it, you have to get through that tutorial to move on. And I'm stuck at this one part where I swear I'm hitting the right beats, but it's just not going. And I'm assuming it's because it's on Xcloud. It's probably just messing up the timing. And so I want to install. And so far from the tutorial, I mean, I've had a lot of fun with it. So I want to install it on one of my machines so I can give it a good try. And I originally had this on just my round robin because I hadn't played it all that much. So that's pretty much all I could say, unfortunately, on that one.
Yeah, give it a try on installed. I have not had any latency on playing locally.
Yeah, there was the first couple ones, when you go through the tutorial, where it kind of stops and you're kind of like on that stage. I got through those, and then there's just now this third one I just can't get past. So that, like I said, that's why. But you've been enjoying it so far?
Yeah, it's a really enjoyable. I've gotten first couple stages or so, but yeah, it's a fun rhythm game. Really enjoyable, and I think it is it's an incredibly charming art style in terms of kind of its Saturday morning cartoon-esque. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Anime-ish kind of.
Yeah, very much kind of 2000s. In some ways, it's playing music from the early 2000s, and it's in an art style of like animation from the early 2000s. And so if you have an appreciation or not at least a repulsion of that, you're probably going to enjoy this aspect of it.
Yeah, I really did like the music at the very least, as far as I'm in it right now. But yeah, there's some very good songs, and I didn't realize it was going to be actually like like popular songs, like stuff that I would actually know. I thought it was just gonna be some like random music that they made or something. So that's kind of nice.
Well, let's stick with Xbox here and Game Logic. You are playing Halo Infinite again, back on the Halo Infinite train. Are you playing multiplayer again, or what brought you? This is a love-hate relationship. It is. I can't tell who's abusing who because it's a vicious cycle of pushing each other away and coming back. But what brought you back this time?
So I wouldn't necessarily brought me back. I've been on Halo Infinite. I think my one breach was after the winter holiday pass, where I was expecting better content. I was expecting more content, and I was especially expecting, a way to. I was very happy that they gave everybody the. I probably don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but I think it's the Yoroi armor, which just kind of looks like the old Shogun armor. But they have yet to provide a way for you to enter the progression path to get a lot of the armor pieces and attachments to that, right? There's no way to get chest pieces and gloves and helmet attachments and yada, yada, yada. It's just this plain kind of piece of armor. So that was my one breach. Other than that, I've been on Halo Infinite pretty steadily. It's definitely something that I went back to when the cheese of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 players had just kind of breached my threshold for putting up with that. I will say I also went back and played a little Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 this week, and I think a lot of the Shweddies have left that game and gone to play Warzone 2.0 because once Warzone 2.0 hit the street, that type of behavior, running into it with that frequency has been steadily going down. But Halo Infinite's been fun. I have a regular crew of people that I run with, and regardless, I think talking to the guys that I usually play with, one of them mentioned, and he was also responsible for the theory that a lot of the players have left COD and gone to multiplayer and gone to Warzone. He mentioned that as we thought a lot about like what Halo Infinite could do to get out of its current rut, and we talked about weapons progression, and I talked about, man, it would sure be nice if you could play Halo Infinite and there was kind of a force fire team mode where there was a mode that you went into and everybody couldn't just pick the same weapon, right? You had to have kind of a combined arms team, and you could have one person was a sniper and one person had was CQB and one person was assault. And weapons progression, I think, would add an additional branch of progression that would help keep people occupied and help keep your player base rate engaged with the game. But since it doesn't have that, in a lot of ways, in contrast to Modern Warfare 2, it is kind of one of the most pure arena-style first-person shooters that's out there. Maybe the only one that's really left, as far as a viable going concern. And, it's just nice being able to go... I mean, and people have some cheesy tactics that they use in Halo Infinite, but I feel like they're fairly small in number, and I also feel like they each have a reliable counter to them. In ways that I think are improved than Call of Duty, right? Which actually today structures maps in some ways specifically suited to cater to campers, right? And I'm like, I don't really understand that. So Halo Infinite, continues to be a positive experience. Like I said, in the last few weeks, I've had the opportunity to play it with these new widescreen monitors that I have. It supports 3440 by 1440p resolution on PC, which is just a really amazing experience to have that additional 33% of real estate in playing that game kind of stretched wide. So yeah, it's been a good time.
Nice. Well, I'm sorry to accuse your relationship with Halo Infinite in such derogatory terms.
No, I have my knocks and I definitely have my criticisms, but like you said, it's a love-hate relationship.
But I think one of the things that is consistent there is that, as you said, when you're playing, it's a lot of fun, right? Like, you may have some questions about the progression and other things, but the core gameplay is incredibly solid.
Has that next season started? Because they delay a season from early last year.
Yeah, so
Late last year.
Season 3 is supposedly going to start in March, but of course, my problem is, as I see people, there are some people who just have not fallen off from the rah-rahing and the pom-pomming and the cheerleading of Halo Infinite. And I'm like, man, you guys really need to let that go, and you really need to admit like some of the weaknesses and missteps this game has had. And so, everybody says, just wait till season 3. And I'm like, you do realize that season 3 was announced before the mass layoffs and before 343i was in. I highly doubt that they're going to retain that schedule because they couldn't retain the schedule when they had a full staff. So, supposedly at best case March, but I suspect it'll be probably closer to the summer before season 3.
Well, we did get a little more details this week of 95 employees from 343 that were affected by the Microsoft layoffs of a couple weeks ago. So, yes, so we will see what the impact of that is. All right, back to you, Tao. We've got one more Game Pass game to hit here, but I talked about this last week. You've been playing both on Xbox and on Switch. So I found the Xbox version very enjoyable to play, and I spent a half hour trying to figure out how to enjoy the Switch version. So I hope you had a better experience than I did.
Yeah, so we're talking about GoldenEye here, and yeah, the Xbox it's definitely a lot easier because you got modern controls that you can just easily put on there. You do have to do some finagling on the Switch, which there's a guy on another server a Discord server that I'm on that he had actually posted a link. I think it was a YouTube video of how to do that on the Switch, and it was pretty simple. You have to go through a bunch of menus and stuff, but you just follow the video and it's you can get it pretty easily. But
like we said before, Nintendo makes it very easy, right? Very few steps.
It's very annoying. So you actually have to go into the system settings, the system controller settings to switch things around and do all this goofy stuff. A nice thing is at least you can save. Once you do that, you can save it as a profile, so you can load it and just kind of reset it back when you want to play something else. So once you get it set up, it's as easy as just loading that profile, that controller profile. But no, in either case, once you do get to switch controls on modern settings, it's a lot better, a lot easier. You're not using the J key buttons to move around and look around on the Switch like you used to back in the day. So, but it's going back to this game, and I know a lot of people say, people say GoldenEye was like the best game ever, and or it's just nostalgia. But I had a lot of fun playing this game, and I still am. Like, maybe it's nostalgia, I don't know, but I just like it's still, it's simple in some ways, but you bump up difficulty and it can be pretty hard. It's just kind of I always like the AI and stuff, just like how they animated them when you shoot them, and just kind of goofy things they say and stuff like that. So, it's the old saying, it's like getting back on a bike. I just got right back on, and I was able to actually go onto the Xbox a lot easier. I breezed through that first level pretty quickly. So, and I did get stuck on one part, and just because I didn't realize what I was doing, and when I went through back on the Switch, I was like, okay, I remember now. I have to, I needed this little decoder thing to get through a door or something like that. So I didn't realize that and when I was going through the Xbox. But so I've just been going back, and I haven't played any multiplayer yet. I kind of want to do that maybe with my family, since we kind of do that with the Halo. And I think this mostly on my wife's side, just because even on Halo, like we tried to go into like I think it was like 3 or 4 on those multiplayer maps, and she's like, and even my son too. He's just like they couldn't. It was too much for them. I think it was just too massive and too big. Even the smaller maps were it was just too much. And kind of we always just kind of stick to the original Halo maps when we're playing multiplayer, since it's just 3 of us. Uh, so I think this would probably kind of just be in the wheelhouse because simpler graphics and it's not too much going around, and you can kind of screw around with the different settings and stuff. So I want to try that definitely with them at some point soon. But just like I said, in all, I'm really having a lot of fun with this. Even though the graphics are Nintendo 64 graphics, that's fine. They did fix them a little bit, smoothed it out, so they're not as blocky, but it's still kind of older graphics. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the game.
Yeah, I feel they're cleaned up, right? They haven't added any texture to them, but
No,
they're definitely cleaned up. Yep.
yeah.
All right. For the sake of time, Tao, do you have any thoughts? Anything you want to say in terms of your final? Not Tao. Game Logic. Once you switch your name back and forth, it confuses me. But I have anyhow. Game Logic. You have a game on here. Do you want to add anything about it tonight? I'm going to save mine for next week and probably dive in a little bit more, so you can have the final slot.
Yeah, my quick hits are, and I've played a little bit of God of War 2018 on PC before, but again, kind of testing some of the new monitors out that I have. Again, just like I said about Halo Infinite, God of War at 3440 by 1440p is it's a transformative experience. Like it just looks so gorgeous, kind of stretched out in that big, wide panoramic view. And it just plays so much wonderfully better on PC. Lots of things that I struggle, that you struggle to get the timing down with with a controller on console. Just it's almost Destiny 2 like in how sad it is that it's so easy on PC to hit like the goofy runes spread out across a level. That combat, right, handling combat when there's lots of targets on screen, and just kind of easily gliding, back and forth between, hitting Atreus to fire his arrows, recalling the axe, quickly going into combat, just bare hands. It's just really great. But most of all, like the game's graphical fidelity at that higher resolution is really just amazing. So it's a big joy to play. In the next few weeks, I hope to be getting back to Miles Morales on PC to kind of play it in the same manner. And then I also want to check out Spider-Man Remastered as well. May actually get started on that tonight. So, again, PlayStation games are great. PlayStation games are great on PlayStation. They play best on PC, and it's just a really awesome experience.
Yeah, I saw Spider-Man, the Miles Morales and Spider-Man combo on Steam was on sale this past week or this weekend here. So, but I do have a question related to this because you've played Ragnarok on PlayStation 5 and now going back and playing God of War on a nice PC. This close back to back, how's the graphical fidelity between the two of them in that case?
I mean, God of War 2018 PC looks better. I mean, and I haven't spent a ton of time in Ragnarok. Ragnarok doesn't suffer from, I mean, God of War 2018 on PlayStation 4 was kind of right at the ragged edge of that performance envelope. And of course, the PlayStation 5 doesn't really have those problems. But, at the end of the day, the texture fills are greater, the detail is greater, the bumps on Kratos' skin that you can see when the camera's pulled in close are just way better. I'm not going to say that it's that Ragnarok is by any means a pauper's game. It looks great and looks as good as anything on console. I will still say I don't know that I've seen anything that looks as good as games built on the Decima engine on PlayStation 5. So Death Stranding and in Horizon games, the God of War games look good. They look great. I think the Decima engine has a little bit over whatever engine Naughty Dog is using. So, I'm sorry, Sony Santa Monica. I mean, PlayStation Studios do tend to kind of run together if they're not Insomniac.
Yeah, fair enough, right? And there are other Naughty Dog games on PC as well. So yeah, that's a fair comparison.
Yeah, unfortunately, while we talked about games that were getting canceled this week, I think we also got word that the Last of Us remake that was going to be on PC has also been delayed until I think later this spring. So, but looking forward to taking that on a spin on PC as well.
Nice. Good conversation tonight, gentlemen. Any final wrap up, any final thoughts before we head out and call this an episode?
I would just like to say, since you brought up Marvel Snap earlier, when we did play, DB thoroughly pretty much kicked my butt. So I got to work on my decks, is all I'm going to say.
Well, yeah, you have some deck composition that it could help you with. So I did have some questions about why you're building your decks in such a way, but it works out kind of nice. You're playing like, basically you have 10 health bars. And if when you lose 2 at a time, unless you've decided to snap, and then you can lose a lot more. But it was very seamless to get in. You create a code and you share that code and you jump right in, right? There's no, it is very localized and kind of walled off from the rest of the experience. There's not any type of leveling that goes on, any type of season pass or any other types of experience that you earn. It doesn't even count towards your dailies, but it is fun to play against somebody else. All right, gentlemen, and we almost made it through an episode with not talking about Marvel Snap, but anyhow, we'll see if we can do it next week in episode 277. Join us back here next week. Thank you for everybody watching. Thank you for those that have come on through. If you're listening to us, please feel free to come back and join us. We're glad to have you here, and it is always a pleasure to have you, both Game Logic and Tao, here on the Enough to Keep Going podcast. So for myself and for all of us here, have a good night. Good luck. God bless.